Hi. Today we pick up with Thelonious Monk His Life in Music. This chapter is entitled Music on Disc. Only a few years ago, it was relatively difficult to obtain certain recordings by Thelonious Monk. Today, in the wake of the much publicized jazz revival, it is possible to get all Monk's Blue Note, Riverside, CBS Black Line, and Vogue recordings and outstandingly remastered CD versions, often at a discount. The complete Blue Note recordings, originally available only from Mosaic, are now put out by Blue Note itself on a 4 CD package. The complete London material of Black Line and Vogue, also published by Mosaic, is now available from the Jazz Store in a new edition by Black Lion. Riverside, too, has finally brought out a complete edition of their Monk recordings on 15 CDs. The classic albums with their original covers, now in CD form, continue to define Monk's work. This is the form in which his work will be discussed in this section. They will be listed with their original LP numbers followed by the CD numbers. Where the CDs contain a bonus track, this will be noted. Where the discographic data is in doubt, we rely on Michael Kuskuna, Mosaic Blue Note booklet, or Leon Bijel, Fred Conte. This survey is intended primarily to explore the musical and biographical aspects of Monk's recordings. The reader may refer to discographies listed in the bibliography for further information. In what follows, only authorized recordings, with a few exceptions, are discussed. There exist a number of unauthorized broadcast recordings of the Monk Quartet on tour, owing to the fact that most concerts were produced in cooperation with radio stations. These recordings are often of poor technical quality and are easy to recognize because they list only the year of recording by way of a date. The Affinity recordings from 1966 are in this category and are included here only with the greatest reservation. Thelonious Monk 1963 in Japan also falls into this category. The live recordings from Menden's are a more complex case. They do not meet the definition of authorized recordings, and we can confine ourselves to recommending the following two collections to anyone with an interest in early Monk. Don Byas's Midnight at Menton's from 1941, and a Xanadu recording also from 1941, Harlem Odyssey. It is certain that Monk plays on both throughout. His playing is interesting in that, for all its conventional fluency, it is still unmistakably his. Joe Guy and Kenny Clark also appear on both recordings. The reviews of the Monk Quartet recordings are deliberately kept short because these performances are often quite similar to one another, both in repertoire and in formal execution. A list of the individual selections follows the name of the record and its catalog number. The selections are listed in the order in which they were originally recorded. Their description, however, follows the sequence on the original LP. The personnel, along with the recording date, are listed before the different selections. Since the first edition of this book, several authorized previously unreleased Monk recordings have appeared. Most are live recordings of the quartet on tour. They are mentioned here in the appropriate places with selections, personnel, and recording dates. But we only go into the music when it departs significantly from Monk's usual concert repertoire. Where a recording date is given that differs from the one on the album or CD jacket, the date given here is one that research has found to be correct. So far as possible, references to the CD versions, inclusive of bonus tracks have been added. All the original Columbia CBS records have appeared on CD with their original covers, and in a few cases with additional selections. Coleman Hawkins Quartet, Bean and the Boys, Prestige PR 7824 CD 24124-2. Coleman Hawkins, Monk, Edward Bass Robinson, Denzel Best, October 19th, 1944. Flying Hawk drifting on a reed on the Bean Recollections. These are the first official recordings of Thelonious Monk, and he makes an outstanding first impression. He was later in the terror of many horn players. But here he supports his leader in a cooperative spirit. He plays the chord changes clearly, reminding one of Dodo Marmarosa of the Charlie Parker Quintet. Also reminiscent of Marmarosa are the brief intros that Monk plays on every piece. In On the Bean, he has a 16-bar solo. His right hand plays blowing lines to a conventional bop accompaniment in the left. Only Monk's preferred intervals are distinctive. Recollections and Drifting on a Reed are ballads, and as such pure Hawkins features. One thing to note is that on Driftin', Monk plays the beginning of I'm Getting Sentimental Over You, another ballad that he would later record repeatedly. On Flying Hawk, he ventures on a whole chorus. Here again, he surprises us with his fast-blowing lines, but the sound is unmistakably Monk. Not least because in the bridge and the ensuing A section he quotes, "Well, you need it at length." Coleman Hawkins bursts with ideas on all the numbers. His phrasing, however, remains true to his style. Bass and drums play light and open 4 to the bar. These 4 numbers were originally issued on 278 RPM shellacs with the Joe Davis label. Both LP and CD editions of this recording include other tracks on which Monk does not appear, all by Coleman Hawkins octets. The Blue Note years. The advent of CD versions has created some confusions about Monk's first releases with Blue Note. On the 2 original Genius of Modern Music LPs, the distribution of selections is different than on the corresponding CDs. The CDs are arranged chronologically and include 2 selections that were left off the originals. The following discussion is based on the arrangement of the original LP releases. A description of the CD reissues follows, with notes on the additional selections. Genius of Modern Music, Volume 1, Blue Note, BLP 1510. Idris Suleiman, Danny Quebec West, Billy Smith, Monk, Gene Ramey, Art Blakey, October the 15th, 1947. Thelonious, without Suleiman, West, or Smith, October the 24th, 1947. Off minor, Ruby My Dear, Well You Needn't, April in Paris, Introspection. George Tate, Sahib Shihab, Monk, Bob Page, Art Blakey, November 21st, 1947. In Walked Bud, Round Midnight, Milt Jackson, Monk, John Simmons, Shadow Wilson, July 2nd, 1948. Misterioso, Epistrophe, I Mean You. The owners of Blue Note embarked on the production of their discovery, Thelonious Monk, with great enthusiasm. They recorded him in October and November of 1947 and again in July 1948, more copiously than could be accommodated on their 78 RPM discs. With this overabundance of material, and in view of the poor sales of Monk's records, Blue Note subsequently put on the brakes. They did return Monk to the studio until July of 1951 and May 1952. The series, Genius of Modern Music, does not adhere to the original chronology. The two albums present a selection from the entire output of this earlier period. Again, the pieces are listed in the chronological order in which they were recorded. The discussions conform to the sequences of titles on the records. The 78 RPM format of the original Blue Note releases imposed an arbitrary limit on the length of the numbers. One consequence is that on pieces in AABA song form, the soloists often share in a chorus, or the reprise of the theme begins immediately after a partial chorus. Many numbers have a compelling terseness as a result. Genius of Modern Music begins with the best known of all his compositions, Round Midnight, which has become the anthem of classic modern jazz. The quintet plays a subtle variation on the introduction that Dizzy Gillespie prefixed to his performance of this ballad in 1946, and which became a standard feature of the composition ever after. Monk states the theme of the A section accompanied by the horns. His voice moves upward in brief, contrasting phrases. The B section is improvised by Monk while the horns play behind him. Twice he throws in his brilliant whole tone runs. In the third A section, Monk is free to do what he wants at the piano. He appends 8 measures of a harmonically adventuresome solo. The drums lend extra excitement to the unusually fast ballad tempo by hinting at double time. In the second A section of the piano chorus, the horns again come in with their parallel lines, and there is no reprise of the theme. By way of a coda, Monk plays a descending arpeggio extending over several octaves. This was retained in all Monk's subsequent performances of the piece, precisely because the well-known theme is not played in its regular form, but merely serves as a foil for the succession of Monk's forceful, condensed phrases. This is one of the most beautiful performances of the number recorded. Off minor, a piece in medium tempo, is a beautiful example of Monk's unique and masterly way with the song form. A 4-bar descending motif undergoes a subtle variation in the second half, leading naturally to a repetition of the A section. The B section parallels in one single melodic movement the direction of the A section motif that, with the reprise, emphasizes the coherence of the whole piece. Monk's solo ingeniously fragments the rhythm, harmony, and melody of the tune. It leads forcefully to the reprise, which this time dispenses with the B section. Monk's ballad Ruby My Dear is also in song form. It has a more idiosyncratic charm than Round Midnight. In his solo, Monk elaborates on the A section with unusual intervals. The reprise is also limited to the A section. Virtuosic, pianistic effects, including a descending whole tone run followed by an ascending arpeggio accompanied by dense chord clusters in the left hand, bring the piece to a close. Here, as in all the pieces described thus far, the rhythm section lends supple support, and Art Blakey is especially clever and congenial. On I Mean You, played in a faster bounce tempo, we hear Monk in an entirely different setting. Monk's friend and Count Basie drummer Shadow Wilson contributes a more evenly swinging but no less interesting accompaniment. And in Milt Jackson, Monk had a lively, horizontally oriented foil. Despite its song form, this Monk composition has a funky, bluesy character. This may explain why Jerry Mulligan would later not only perform the piece but pass it off as his own under the title Motel. In the B section, Jackson and Monk play off one another in a stimulating exchange. Jackson and Monk share a solo chorus, and it is interesting how Monk's angular and not very supportive accompaniment does not put Jackson off from his almost swing-style solo. Monk's own solo plays with ideas in quasi-arpeggio form. April in Paris, again with the same rhythm section as on the first number, is conventional by Monk's standards. Despite his characteristic piano style, the somewhat commonplace harmonies of the basic theme remain predominant. In Walked Bud, on the other hand, captures Monk at his most distinctive. With a descending whole tone run performed con brio, he dramatizes his friend Powell walking in. Then the ensemble joins in with the fanfare-like theme in song form, which contrasts with the B section, though it too has a fanfare-like flavor. Monk's rhythmically and harmonically unsettling piano accents become a standard element of the classic Monk composition. In his solo, he plays a kind of ping-pong with Art Blakey, in which rhythmic and melodic shreds of the theme serve as the bouncing ball. George Tate plays a half chorus on the trumpet, which in tone and phrasing harks back to the swing era. Sahib Shihab's alto saxophone next is pure bebop, but in a style independent of Charlie Parker. Thelonious is Monk's famous monotone theme in medium fast tempo. The theme's single note is sufficient to create music because of the way harmony and rhythm are juxtaposed to the ever-shifting accents of this note, as the piano in the A section hammers it out in Morse code fashion. The harmonic contrasts provided by the horns are particularly striking here. In the expanded B section, the piano plays around this tone, then demonstrates again in the A section that it has it firmly in its grasp. Monk is the only soloist. His solo begins with a spare structure similar to that of the theme itself. In the second chorus, Monk's left hand suddenly begins to comp in stride style while the right continues its explorations up and down the keyboard. There is a rhythmically brilliant passing reference to the theme of salt peanuts. The reprise is again composed of the A section. The quartet with Milk Jackson reappears on Epistrophe. The melody that Monk had developed from a motif by Kenny Clarke. Later it would become the quartet's theme music. The basic motif sounds like a drum theme proceeding upward from the bass drum over the tom-toms and then nudged by the bass drum, moving downward again over the tom-toms. Against this figure, Monk just juxtaposes bursts of ascending triplets in the bass. Shadow Wilson holds the contrary movements together with his work on the hi-hat, which reminds one of Joe Jones. In the B section, the vibraphone swings straightforwardly, but the bass in the piano does not cease its dark menacing, and so Jackson is more reserved in the second A section. During his logical solo, the piano again picks out contrasts. After 16 measures, it goes its sullen way for the rest of the chorus. The hi-hat continues to hold tight to the rhythmic reins. Misterioso is yet another Monk classic. Intervals of a 6 and 8 notes are packed out stepwise upwards and downwards through the blues scale. The bass half of the piano increasingly contrasts with the vibraphone descant. In its solo, the vibraphone swings softly, while the piano lays down widely spaced chords darkened by dissonance. It is along the lines established by these probing chords that the piano in its first chorus seeks out new material. The second chorus follows the rhythmic patterns of the theme to become less mysterious, even cheerful, finally ending in a rapid arpeggio. The theme reprised on the vibraphone is also bright in mood. Only at the very end does it become complicated again by bass notes from the piano. Well, You Needn't is performed in a trio setting. It is among the few melodies by Monk that other musicians have played with any frequency. It is a masterful example of how Monk constructed coherent up-tempo themes in AABA form from shorthand motifs and a compelling B section. In the middle of Monk's solo, there is an interesting passage of chord clusters. Well, You Need It is one of the Monk themes that, in his own words, swings by itself. Well, thanks for watching and listening. Catch me in the next video. Like and subscribe. May you find lasting happiness.